Welcome back to TMI with Teryl and Martha. If you're watching us up on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We want you to do that. Today, we're going to be talking about the journey of caregiving, and both of us are in different places on that, but we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's the most fun is when we come from different places, we are able to kind of connect with more people because there's a lot of yous and there's a lot of me's out there. So I think it's important that we can talk about how our worlds have been affected in that arena and what we've done to take care of ourselves in the process, or not what we didn't do and we should be doing.
Yeah, because I think that the feeling is that when you're caregiving, you can't take care of yourself, but you've got to because you are the lifeline.
Yeah.
And it's really important. So Teryl, tell your story first.
Okay. Well, my story began in 2011 when my middle daughter was diagnosed with APML leukemia. APML is not your typical, not that there's, it's sad to say not your typical leukemia, but there's a lot of different types of leukemia out there. So this was a subset of an AML leukemia, which was very rare, which made this whole event even harder. But she was diagnosed with this in 2011. And unbeknownst to me, we would be swept away from the general public for about a year. And in that time, there were so many ups and downs and uncertainties and a lot of things I had to do, which we'll talk about, whether you're inpatient in a hospital and you're sitting with someone, being their healthcare advocate, and making sure they were getting the needs met as they needed to, or even being at home. So part of this journey, I think I came out of it with a bit of a nursing degree. At the end, I was running the machines myself in the hospital. And when I had to use some of the equipment they sent me home with, I learned how to count drips. All you nurses out there would know what that looks like. And I had to learn how to clean and access a port with, double lumens, which were 2 lines that were hanging out of her chest. And, it wasn't really an option for me. It was I had to do it. So, it was quite the journey that, when you're caretaking someone, you kind of step out of your own world a little bit. And so I had an older daughter who was graduating from Brenau. I had a sixth grader, a female sixth grader. We all know how hard being in sixth grade is, for anybody, middle school. And so she lost her mama and her sister for a little while. So,
well, and that was one thing I wanted to ask because you had other children.
Yes.
So, I hear from a lot of caregivers that I talk to that have children, and we're going to talk about the other end of the spectrum too, so don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But that have children that get ill, how that impacts the other children. Because what I heard verbalized to me by parents was that they were so afraid because they spent so much time on that child that was sick.
Right.
That they forgot the other children.
Yeah, and it's not that you are actively forgetting them. It's where you're put in a position that you have no choice but to focus on the one who is in the greatest need. And that takes you away from the other two because it's hard to balance when you're in a life or death situation, especially. And, it was kind of a long term, but, there's a lot of parents out there who are dealing with lifetime situations with a child, and they have multiple children. So my heart is with every one of you who are facing those situations. But we go back to community in that, and, where it takes a village to raise a child. The things that saved me, first of all, I had been in Gainesville, Georgia for about 10 years, maybe 10 years at that point. No, maybe less than that, 6. I didn't know this community because I was so busy just trying to run the business, right? And run the family. When my daughter got sick, Martha, this community rose up for me in a way that I can never, ever repay. And that's why if anybody ever comes to the spa on Green Street, any 501c, anybody ever needs anything from me, I am always there to provide something. because when I needed it the most, this community showed up in droves. I had food chains nonstop for 6 months or more going to my husband at my house, feeding he and my daughter Madison. And then I had another food chain sending me home cooked foods in the hospital. So, I mean, what a blessing. I mean, you look for blessings in the cursings. We've talked about that on our podcast. And, people ask me, how did you survive a situation where, my daughter, legitimately passed away in front of me, once. And then 2 other times she was very much on the verge where the doctors didn't know. And people think, how did you get through that? And I'm like, oh, it was really easier than one would think.
Because you have to. You probably just go into a mode.
You play the cards you're dealt.
Yeah.
Yeah, you play the cards you're dealt. But then if you decide, if you're in a situation that's very difficult, if you decide to what I call finding the pony in the poop, and that's from an old joke about a little boy trying to get his brother in trouble.
Yes.
Piled up a bunch of manure in this kid's room. He saw the bright side to everything all the time, and the other boy was just tired of it. And one day the mother walks into the room, and the other little boy is watching to see if he gets in trouble, and he's shoveling the poop all over the place. And the mom asks, "What are you doing?" He goes, "There's so much poop in here. There's got to be a pony somewhere." So
I can't imagine any woman walking into a room where poop is being scooped that she would calmly say, "What's going on here?
What are you doing?"
My kids would call it going psycho. I would be like throwing things. What is it? They love to remind me of those times.
But, I was looking for the pony in the poop, so to speak. So there were so many blessings, relationships that were bonded. But this community, in this time where my world was revolving around Eggleston Hospital down in Atlanta, we were going from Eggleston Hospital to the other Scottish Rite, because Scottish Rite was the inpatient.
Right. And I think it's all CHOA now, right?
It is.
It's all CHOA.
All under another hospital.
Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, I think is what it is.
It's one hospital now.
Yes.
It's amazing. But so basically, Savannah suffered a stroke because of the leukemia within 24 hours of the diagnosis. So it was a very, it was a double whammy.
And how old was she?
She was 18, just turned 18. It was in April of 2011. So she could have been sent to an adult hospital.
Nah.
But she was sent to a children's hospital.
You did the right thing.
And that saved her life, quite honestly, because they treat children and adults quite differently. And this was such a chaotic situation that it just worked perfectly. Again, there's the pony, right? There's been so many blessings through the process. But, needless to say, I spent many, many evenings without sleep. Many evenings, holding a child that was running 107 fever. And this is not a small child. I was in a hospital bed with a, 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And the nurses would come and bring me soup in a cup with a big old straw so that I could eat.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't going to leave her side for a moment.
Right.
But during all this community we had a blood drive at Life South. Biggest blood drive they've ever had. In fact, some of the people that went and gave blood for her are still going to this day and giving platelets for her. She had, of course, A negative, which is a very not that easy of a blood
match.
type. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, while my husband was just amazing with my youngest daughter, Maddie. She was pretty spoiled by the time I got out of the hospital. He decided he was going to make her everything she loved when he did cook. And so one night that she had a hamburger hot dog pizza. Seriously.
Yeah.
Hamburger hot dog pizza. I was like, oh Lord, I will never be able to get back in this home and I will never win after that. But it was a very challenging time, and caregiving, the things that happened after that, having to take a child home with you that barely survived, and then figure out how to keep her alive once you get out of the hospital setting. That was the scariest part, and that was hard, right?
And how
Because
long did this go on?
this went on for over a year. So on top of that, I also own a business. So I would have to literally I remember sitting in kind of the windowsill of the ICU, and I had my computer with me, and I'd be doing payroll.
Yeah.
While I was sitting in the ICU. So there was things that I had nobody else to hand over those responsibilities to. And I did, thank God for the Ronald McDonald House. I was able to go. We were there. Our family could go there. We were just far enough away. My daughter was 80 Pi, my oldest, with Brunel. And
So they were right there.
well, they were her whole college career. She was raising money for Ronald McDonald. That was their philanthropy. So the day she went to go check in, I mean, I get teary thinking about it, but the day she went to go check in as a family member of a child with cancer or of a, sibling, she hit her knees. She was crying when she walked in the door because the experience, that reality hit her of, oh my God, I'm actually utilizing the thing that I have been tirelessly raising money for all 4 years of college. So that was quite a moment. And, meeting the people that we met there were incredible. But, those are the things that helped me through. But when we go back to books, there was a book that I read every day. Well, obviously the Bible. I did the one a day. I've read the Bible through many, many times. You may not see me in church very often because I'm usually out with my animals. But I would read the one a day Bible every day. And The Majesty of Calmness was also one that I would read to help me kind of stay centered. Because I think, and which we'll know in your discussions of what you've been doing, the sandwich, the most important thing is to take care of you, because without you, you can't give care to anyone. And so I was having to maintain a space where I could look down on the situation and maintain my calmness and maintain my focus, because her doctor was always telling me, I hate sending my oncology patients to the rehab floor for the main reason that they're not oncology doctors, they're rehabilitation doctors. So I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
You have to be her advocate. You have to pay attention to everything that is being told to you and make sure you're watching over the fact that these two things sometimes don't always cross. And let me tell you, Martha, we weren't there 5 minutes. And the nurse that came in, because she's a stroke patient, wanted to give her blood thinners because that's standard protocol. And the first thing I had to do was stand up for myself and say, you can't touch her with that. Let me speak to the doctor first.
Right.
And luckily, I was there to do that. And I had the courage and the bravery and the fortitude to do that, because as it turned out, that was the last thing she needed because of the medication she was on for the cancer, blood cancer.
Right.
So.
And how's she doing today?
She's doing great. She's given me my very first grandchild. And when you have a stroke, your brain's a pretty incredible thing. I also got a degree in trauma of the brain. I learned all kinds of things about how the left frontal lobe works. Those of you with any kind of left frontal lobe disturbances, it is a tough thing because that's your executive function. And without the executive function, the things that we take for granted, like strategizing and planning and all of those things, when it gets short-circuited, you have a little less impulse control and also aphasia. So she had to learn to walk and talk again through that whole process. So the fact that she is a fairly competitive volleyball player today in an adult league, she chases after a very, very active 4-year-old, soon to be 5-year-old. She travels the country taking photos on construction sites for a company that does active, photos for big builds, like building roads, bridges, etc. And she works for my neighbor across the street part-time. So she's certainly carrying quite the load. We're out I think almost 15 years. I mean, it was 2011. So at the 10th year, she was pregnant and having a baby, which they said she probably couldn't do. But caring for her in the home, I didn't have to do as much of that. And I've been really blessed in my life with my parents that they've had a caregiver built in, that didn't end up being me, which, I would have done it with absolute joy and without any problem. But my stepmother gave her life, 7 years of her life, caring for my dad, and probably kept him alive at least 5 years beyond what they gave him at Emory to live. He had congestive heart failure. And my mother is doing great. She's up in Hiawassee, and I happen to have a pseudo brother living there with her. He's not my brother by blood, but he loves her, and he was committed to my stepfather as well. And he's been there, and anything she needs, he's right there for her. So I've been very blessed that way. I know you, on the other hand, are currently and have been taking care of your father-in-law.
Well, it's been 15 years ago, my mother had cancer, and she came and lived with us for 6 months, her final 6 months of her life. And so that was kind of my first kind of introduction. And it wasn't a very long period of time. And the kind of sandwich generation. And you have to deal with things like your kids start getting nervous about coming home because there's a sick person in the house, or there would be any given time where I would have like a living room full of 85-year-olds because people would come to visit her. And so you're taking care of all these extra people, in the course of the day, which is interesting. Funny. But my mom was a great patient. She really respected my husband, who's a physician. And we had a couple of of his patients who tag teamed help for us. So they came up while I went to work and didn't mind, because the big problem with services, and that's one of the things you'll learn when you're dealing with caregiving, is that services want a minimum 4 hours. Right. And I completely understand that. I mean, that's so they know what they're going to get paid and that kind of thing. Right. But with the kind of job that I have and the kind of job my husband had, some days I needed 6 hours, but other days I only needed 2 hours. And I needed somebody that would be flexible like that. And we found this little tag team of Peggy and Monty, and they came in the morning, and they would stay until I got home from work. And it was great. It worked out really wonderful, and stayed with my mom. And I would get her up and get her into the living room in the morning. And it was really good. And she lived about 6 months, and she passed away in our home. We had hospice at the end, which was, the unsung hero of the medical profession is hospice, okay? Yeah. Because we're not used to people dying at home. The other generations were more used to that. Oh, yeah. Okay? It used
to be the only place you could.
We've been kind of lulled into this false sense of security by antibiotics, because the things that people used to die of regularly, they don't. Other things have come along, but the kind of things that people died of young don't happen as much anymore. Right. So it was a really blessing for me to be able to care for my mom in that final stage of her life, and her not have to be hospitalized, and to be able to be at home and to see everybody up until the end.
That's amazing.
Which was great. Yeah. And then about 4 years ago, we started to notice that my mother-in-law and father-in-law my mother-in-law especially had some really bad dementia, and and that doesn't get better, it gets worse. And we had to go through the process of, getting them out of their home, selling all of their stuff, or getting rid of all of their stuff, which was a lot. And it was traumatic for me, quite frankly, because there was so much stuff it was right after COVID, that we ended up throwing away because nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
And it just felt like such a waste for me. But the places like Habitat for Humanity and Goodwill, they weren't taking stuff again yet.
Right.
Because they were nervous about COVID.
2020.
And so it was just difficult there. So we got them into an assisted living facility, and got some help in there. So it wasn't like we were there every day. It was a little bit of a different kind of caregiving, but we had the financial responsibility. We had the medical responsibility, the POA, all the legal stuff you got to get in place. And we were kind of the last people standing in Gainesville. Everybody else has moved out except for my in-laws and us. So we've kind of had to deal with that. So my husband and I kind of divided up the work. I handled all the day-to-day kind of admin stuff, making sure they had what they needed, visiting, doing that sort of thing. Right. He handled all the medical stuff. And so that was...
Which was a lot, I'm
Which
sure.
made sense, but it was good. Yeah. And then Myra passed away about 14, 15 months ago. Had a very, thankfully had a very short illness.
Oh, that's
I mean, her dementia was
merciful.
long, but she developed what we didn't even type out the kind of cancer she had. We just did the CAT scan and we could see how it was everywhere. And that there was no point in putting her through the testing because
what a blessing.
Well, the good thing was we knew when she was lucid, she had made it very clear that if she was diagnosed with cancer at that point in her life, she did not want to do anything about it. That's right. And even in her dementia, I remember we were taking her to Alabama for a weekend, and we said, you remember, Mama, too, you always said if you got cancer, you didn't want to do anything. She said, that's right. Even though I don't know if she knew what she was saying, but even in her dementia, she remembered that.
Right.
And when we sat there and told her, Lynn told her about her disease. That's my husband, Lynn. Because he didn't want the doctor to have to do it because he remembered how hard it is to tell people there isn't anything else you can do.
Right.
And so it was very interesting because she had not had a lucid statement for months. And when he sat down and told her that, she said, am I going to die from this? Aww. And is there anything we can do? Those two questions. And Lynn explained it to her and she was like, okay. And then when the nurse came a little bit later that day, she says, I'm going to die soon. And she was okay with it. She was okay with it. She was at peace with it. Yeah. So it was about 3 weeks later that she passed away. And during that time, my father-in-law contracted a staph infection from we didn't realize how much she was doing for him.
Right.
And so when she was not there, and then he got an infection in a bed sore.
Right.
And he ended up in the hospital with staph infection or a septic infection.
Septic is not a good diagnosis.
The man has 9 lives. I'm telling you what, it's like amazing. But so he was in the hospital actually at the time she died. So they used to bring him up to see her at hospice and all of that. It was very sweet. And then she passed away, and then he had to get moved to a more intensive care type facility. So that's where he's living now, where they can do more things for him.
He's got kind of around the clock.
Kind of around the clock kind of care. So it still is more us in the role of Lynn handling the medical side.
Right.
And me kind of handling the admin, touchy-feely kind of stuff,
Right.
And then kind of swooped in the middle of all of that, if that wasn't enough, my brother-in-law got ill in a very short illness and died. So I was not, it wasn't like caregiving.
Right. But
because it was so fast, but it was just kind of in the middle there.
But it breaks in. And so I know some of your self-care.
Yes.
Because I see you at the spa.
Yes.
But what are some other things you do, or even Lynn? We need to get him on this show.
Well,
by the way,
what I did is I protected. He dealt with it by denial. Right. Okay. I don't know that he's dealt with it yet. Okay. Yeah. He loved his mother very much, and he is not fully grieved for her because we're still caring for her dad. It's just so much. Yeah. Okay.
Dad's still here.
And he doesn't deal with feelings very well. Okay.
Typical for his
and so
generation. Yeah.
I make sure I'm there for him, but I continue. I have a therapist that I see on a regular basis. I made sure I kept those appointments. Mm-hmm. My hair done every month. I made sure I kept my nails done. I got my massages. I set aside time for myself because I knew I had to. And I knew if I didn't do it, no one else would. Okay. Exactly. Because there's always something you can do.
Yes.
And I had to learn boundaries with the other family members too, because not to be mean or rude, but if they were going to swoop in for a visit and then tell you 3 things you need to do, I nicely would say, no, I would say, you know what, if you think that's a good idea, great. Could you please handle that for me? Because I don't have any more bandwidth to do anything else. And we found out what was important and what wasn't important. Because if they thought it was really important, they would stay and do it. And if they didn't, they wouldn't. And it's really kept our relationship with the other family members good.
Yeah, that's
because
important.
There is that drama that happens when there's multiple family members.
Breakdown there.
Yes.
And just, trying to judge the situation, or one person thinks something should happen one way, another person. I mean, I won't tell you that we didn't have some we had a little bit of an argument in the actual ICU waiting room when my daughter went down, because, everybody loved her. I mean, my dad, his wife, my children, like the people in our, everybody loved my child. And so in the moment when it was just all the stuff was going on, have you ever seen two dogs in a window and they're barking at something outside? And the next thing you know, one looks at the other one and they start chewing on each other. There's just so much tension in the air. They just go after each other.
Right.
That's kind of what happened in a weird way. I would have never believed it, but we ended up having to kick my dad out of the ICU waiting room because he was insisting on things that I couldn't do for him.
Well, and I think the hard part is because we all like to be flexible and all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to these kind of caregiving situations, somebody's got to have the final say.
Yeah.
And my in-laws felt very strongly that I should be that person.
Wow.
Now, that put a lot on me, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But they, to the point where they drew it all up legally, it was all handled legally. And I remember my father-in-law saying to me, he said, I knew you would get a lot of crap from this position that I put you in, but I knew you could handle it.
Yes.
And I knew you would handle it with grace.
Well, he was trusting you.
He was trusting me. And so, I haven't had to play that card but one time where it's like, I appreciate your opinion, but, I've got the final say on this, and this is what I think we should do. I've only had to play that card one time, but it has made me very aware, and tell me if you agree about this. It's made me very aware to make sure my stuff is in order.
Right.
So that because what's usually going to happen? Well, what's usually going to happen with older people, okay, is like you mentioned how your stepmother had taken care of your father.
Yes.
Okay. Usually you have one spouse taking care of the other spouse, and the family doesn't have to get that involved in that because the spouse has got it.
It's already handled.
But then when it's one spouse left, then it gets to be more of a group situation.
It does. And I'm dealing with that where my mom is concerned, right? Because my dad has passed away. My stepfather has passed away. So my mom is 80. She'll be 82 in October. So I actually had accidentally given her a year in some of the other episodes, and I heard about that. So she's doing okay. She has some medication she takes on occasion does cause her to have dementia-like symptoms, because those are the side effects of some of the medications she's on. But one of the things that I have found is you have to work hard to not be that family that goes into conflict because you love the person so much. Everybody wants their say. Right. So my mom is being cared for by someone who is not a blood relative, right? But he's lived there with her for 20 some odd years, and he has taken care of her. And if she needs to go to a doctor, he's driving her to the doctor.
He's taking the responsibility.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Fresh home cooked meals in the morning, the afternoon. You can't put a dollar amount on that.
Right.
And so not all of us view that in the same way. I am so happy he's there. I've got 3 children, 2 grandchildren. My youngest daughter is engaged now. You did hear about that,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So I'm so excited about that.
I think the advice I would give, because certainly I'm not like a licensed expert, but I have lived this,
that's important.
Be clear about what you view.
Right.
The best gift you can give your children is to have a discussion with them about your feelings about the end of your life.
Agreed.
Because the problem happens if you have multiple kids, that one kid comes in, and it's usually the one that doesn't visit as often. They come in, they feel guilty about the fact that they haven't seen mom and dad as often, mom or dad. and they want to insert themselves at the end because they feel guilty. Okay. And you have to give them freedom from that.
I was going to say, can you save them a spot?
Yeah. but I think it's got to be even more difficult in your situation because you were dealing with your child, which ultimately your mama bear comes out.
Oh,
I mean,
so much so.
You know, and you should be the final word. You and her father should be the final word as far as how things are done. And really, after you make a decision, nobody else should view any more opinions about it. And that's hard for people to do because they love that person so much.
Oh, that was where all the problems came from.
Yes, but it's really hard to do. And, doing the right thing in difficult situations isn't easy. Okay? And the hardest thing I've been doing lately is waiting. Okay? I am a person that if you send me a text message, if you send me something, I'm going to get back to you very quickly. There are 3 people in my life because of the caregiving that I allow to come through no matter what time of the day or night it is. Right. But the rest of the people, I am in this place now where I wait to respond to text messages. Yep. And on emails, I wait because I made a couple of mistakes by being in a hurry that caused a lot of difficulty.
I've done that.
And so a lot of times if you wait, I had an old boss named Steve Pernado when I worked at Rich's, and this was back in the days of memos, okay? And he said he used to throw them in the trash. The first one he'd throw in the trash.
Right.
Because it probably wasn't that important.
Big deal. Yeah.
And how you know whether it's important is if they follow up.
Right.
So I'm taking more of that tactic with the digital age.
Right.
That if it's somebody that I think I'm going to have, I don't even want to say confrontation, but where maybe you're going to be going back and forth on caregiving, let's just say, for it to stay on topic. Right. I just wait. I wait. And if it's important enough, they're going to reach back out to me again.
Good.
And then I'll deal with it.
That's very smart. That's really smart. There's no more mess you can make is by jump reacting to a question or a text or something that if you just waited for a minute, there would have been no need even for a response at all. Because then you would have been, the problem usually handles itself in those situations. Don't you agree?
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, so, I had to actually change. I had to close my Facebook down back then. No, well-meaning people, but sometimes you get a barrage of people wanting to help.
Oh, yeah.
When you're in a situation where you've either faced a loss or you have a major health crisis personally or with a child or a parent. And so I have to have a Facebook in order to run the spa's Facebook. So I had to come up with a fake Facebook name to go back and put up. So the people that know me, they know how to find me on Facebook, but it's not going to be through my actual name. Now, Instagram, I'm beyond those days.
Right,
I started, it's under my name if you want to find me. But my Facebook name is kind of a hidden name so that I could run the spa and not have to, if I was going to go to Facebook for any reason, deal with a backlash. Like I said, back in those days too, I felt really bad to not friend someone, like friendships meant the world to me. So when they use the term friend or unfriend, that was actually pretty hard for me.
Well, and I think too, you're right about that. I had too many friends. Yeah. I don't know. It's it's crazy. But I think also what you have to do in these kinds of situations is you got to appoint a person that's in charge. So we talked a little bit about as it related to the care, but also the friends that want to know things.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like I have a friend of mine that's just found out she had a brain tumor and had it operated on, and she's going through rehab right now. And there's lots of people in her life that want to help, but everybody reaching out to her just creates a problem. And even everybody reaching out to her husband. So they've appointed a friend of theirs
to be the spokesperson.
This is the person you get information from. They've agreed to do that. That's really smart. And it's a great idea, I think, for people to use because people just want to help. But sometimes it's because it's so easy to communicate. In the old days when you had to write a letter and it took 4 or 5 days to get there, or maybe you were gone all day and you made a phone call, but you only had a couple of phone calls in the course of a day because you were gone all day. And that's changed to immediate connection. And that's good and bad.
Well, I have a girlfriend who has a ton of friends. She's a realtor, and she has been basically helping take care of her husband. He was diagnosed early with Parkinson's, very young. And let me tell you, I think that there's certain points in time when everybody has their idea of how you think they need to do things. Or, I think one of the bigger stresses on her, knowing her and watching them, is all the input she gets on what she should or shouldn't do.
Oh, yeah.
With her husband from well-meaning people. I'm just as equally responsible, because you want to just offer, solutions, advice, things that are going to help your friend feel better, or how she could help herself or her husband. But I think, it's that old adage, unless they ask you for your advice, you're probably better not to give advice at all. Love them, listen to them, bring food, send food, things of that nature. Just ask, check in. How are you doing today? Right? Because people always ask about the person who's facing the health crisis, but how often do you actually look at the caregiver and say, how are you?
Yes.
How are you today?
How are you? Yep. And you've got to have that person you can be brutally honest with, that
Sometimes
is
you're
not going to
good.
betray your confidence.
Right. Somebody you can say, I'm not doing good today.
That's right.
I'm under it. I just got goosebumps, because I think that is, people who are caregiving, especially, like for me, when I was taking care of my child, I was afraid to face the unfortunate feelings that I might have had. I was afraid that if I acknowledged how I actually felt, that I would cave at any general moment. So I think being able to look at somebody you care about who's in the process of caring for another and empathize with them, maybe see if they're doing okay, what you can do for them. Because guarantee you, that caregiver, just like you with your family, me with my daughter, we're doing everything possible to care for the person that we're in charge of or that we're responsible to. So,
and I think the other part you have to do and you have to understand is that everybody's in this together.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we're the only ones that are going to know how it's going to turn out, you know? And I think that having somebody that will, the benefit of us all living longer,
right,
is that a lot of us are older doing this. Okay.
Yeah.
So my father-in-law is 93 years old. My husband's 70. Okay. He'll be 71 this year. I'm 66. We thought we'd be long past this, and at this point in time. But thankfully, he's lived, and really, they were very, very mobile until they were 89. Okay, so it's not like
that's good
they've
news
done
for your
great.
husband.
Yeah, that's been done great. But I think that it is like a sandwich, because you still have your kids and your grandkids.
You're trying
and they feel nervous about how to interact with you. And you just got to keep those lines of communication open. Yeah,
I agree. And, I think for the children, they just need to know that one of the joys
someday.
Yeah. One of the joys of our lives is them and our grandchildren. And someday they too will be in this very same situation. So I think it's important that the reality just needs to become clear. And, we all need to look to see if the question is, how can I help? Even if you're open to hearing, do nothing, Well,
you have to be open to hearing that.
Yeah. Even if the answer to that is do nothing, then that to me is like a great place for us all to start, especially when we see somebody that we know is, having a burden, is bearing a burden, but it's their burden to bear. And if we can help, great, let's find out from them personally what to do. And if it's our family members, I don't go to the person trying to care for mom. Every now and then I'll say, hey, can you do. But if he tells me no, I'm fine with it. So we just got to learn to kind of read the room, so to speak.
So it's been great talking about this today, because I think it's something we're all going through, and we appreciate you being a part of this community, TMI with Teryl and Martha. While you're watching us on YouTube, we hope you will like and subscribe, because we love for you to be a part of this and tell us about things that you'd like to talk about. But I appreciate everything that you've done and all the interactions that we've gotten, and we thank you so much for being with us today.
And we love sharing with you. So if you have any more ideas of conversations that Martha and I can have together, we love just talking with each other. The icing on the cake is when we bring in the professionals. And please feel like you can, especially on the YouTube, you can leave a comment and tell us things you'd like to hear. Because for us, we know that your wellness deserves a little oversharing.